Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy, and I am unbelievably excited today as we move into our next Draw Together session. Our guest today is going to be none other than Dan Pink himself, an international best-selling author. Dan, would you just quickly say hello?
Hello. I can hear you great.
Very good. Well, Dan, at the risk of embarrassing you, Dan Pink is my hero.
Wow, you need some new heroes, Dan.
Well, as I've been working on my series of books, when I need inspiration or I need to know that this can be done, I just go and look up whatever you're up to, and it does serve as real inspiration for me. You became locked in as my true hero when you actually became a co-executive producer and host on the National Geographic show Crowd Control. Tell us just quickly about that. That seems like a pretty cool Hollywoody sort of thing. What was that all about?
Well, we never made it to Hollywood in this. We spent a lot of time in New Jersey, though, shooting this show. Is a 12 episode series on National Geographic where we would take public problems like people speeding, jaywalking, peeing in the pool, that kind of stuff, not returning their shopping cart, and we would apply behavioral science to the solutions, plug in some groovy hidden cameras, and see what people did. Fun, interesting series that we did.
And you got to tell me, since I'm a car buff, it looks to me. What is the car you're in? Is this a Corvette? What is that?
I'm not sure. This is something that we did in New Mexico, where one of our behavior interventions to stop speeding was we actually changed a section of Route 66 so that putting grooves into the road. So if you went over those grooves at the speed limit, it would play the song "America the Beautiful." And we tested it. It's actually a really complicated and expensive proposition, and we tested it out with some people from the Albuquerque, New Mexico classic car.
Well, so literally, as you would go over the bumps, it would go brr, 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 or something like that.
Precisely. It's still in place there. So there's a stretch of Route 66 just east of Albuquerque, where it has to do with the If you put grooves in the road and they're spaced a certain amount of time, when a car goes over, it will make what is essentially a musical note. And if you, in different spacings, creates different notes. And so if you do different spacings in the pattern of notes for America the Beautiful, and you go over at 55 miles an hour, you will hear America the Beautiful in your car. It's actually really cool.
You know what we are going to do after this? I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm going to find out on a map where exactly that place is on Route 66, and I'm going to go there on another Napkin Academy. I'm going to go there and record it.
Do it.
Okay, so Dan, one of the reasons, aside from driving cool cars and making music on the road, that you've been a hero of mine is I really do think that Dan Pink, you as an author, have done more to help business minds, and I'm going to draw our business minds kind of in a box over here, enter into the creative zone. I think you've done more of that than probably any other author in the last 10 years. And as a business person myself, I really like the idea of moving people who've learned a lot of business skills into thinking more our creative soft skills. And I think you've done a tremendous amount in moving people forward on that. And I want to call our viewers' attention to, I think, you've written, how many books altogether have you written? It's got to be about 6 at this point.
I've just finished my 6th. Okay,
we'll talk about that one in a moment. 3 of my favorites, A Whole New Mind, Drive, and To Sell Is Human. Dan, just give us your quick, what's about each one, if you would?
A Whole New Mind is about the shift in the workplace away from what we can think of metaphorically as left brain abilities, logical, linear, SAT spreadsheet abilities, which have become easy to outsource and automate, and more toward Dan Rome kind of skills, big picture synthesis rather than analysis, more right brain skills. Drive is about, looks at 50 years of research in the science of motivation, and finds that a lot of the motivational mechanisms we're using inside of organizations, inside of schools, are outdated. That especially this one kind of motivator that I call an if-then motivator is great for simple short-term tasks, but not so great for more complex creative tasks. And this lays out a different approach to enduring motivation for those kinds of things. And then To Sell Is Human looks at both functionally what's happening in the workplace and how a huge portion of what we do every day on the job is persuade, convince, cajole, try to move other people, try to sell. But we're doing it in a very different landscape. And this looks at the science of persuasion and some of the qualities we can have to be more persuasive in this new remade world, and also some particular tactical things we can do to become more persuasive when all of us are persuading all the time.
So you're, I imagine then from To Sell Is Human, clearly a subscriber to the view that kind of the Zig Ziglar view that we are all in sales all of the time. Whether we have salesperson on our business card or not, we are all in sales. Would you say that that's a true statement?
I would second that emotion. I would be your hallelujah chorus for that.
And so those are some of the books that you have given us. And I have a quick question for you. Could you summarize your next book for us in one word?
I actually could. The word would be when.
The word would be when.
Yes, and that also happens to be the title of the book. And so this next book, which is coming out in January, is about the science of timing and all of the when decisions we make in our life.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it was a very, very difficult book to write. The amount of research that I had to go through was voluminous, and some of it very, very complicated and difficult to understand. But I think what I've discovered is that timing is much more of a science than it is an art, and you can learn how to get better at it. And I think there's some really, really good practical lessons for living better, working smarter.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Before this call, we started talking about, I just went and saw the movie Dunkirk the other day, and I think the director does some really interesting things in moving time around. I'm fascinated by time. So after this, today we're going to talk about your book, To Sell Is Human, because that's one that I've had a chance to read in detail. I think it's fabulous. Of all your books, I would say this, of your most recent books, it's my favorite. How about that?
Wow.
So perfect. Okay. So what I'd like to do, Dan, is, are you ready?
And here, by the way, here, the other one's not out yet. In fact, here for all of your viewers is this is actually the copy edited manuscript of the new one, which is sitting on my desk right now. So what
a lovely feeling to have. How long have you been working on this one? It must be at least a couple
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years of work held as a stack of paper in your hand. That's got to feel pretty good.
Yes and no. It's still not good. It's still not good enough. So it's annoying in that regard.
All right, Dan. Enough preamble. Are you ready
Indeed.
Are you ready to do some draw together?
I am so ready, other Dan. You don't even know.
All right. So the basic rules. Pretty simple. We're going to select a topic, and the topics are easy because they're going to be topics that are quotes of yours that I've pulled directly out of To Sell Is Human. We are going to draw it together,
yeah.
But the mechanism of that is you will take over our virtual whiteboard, and you get to draw 5 lines or write 5 letters, and then you'll hand the digital pen over to me, and then I will draw 5 more lines and hand it back to you. We'll be talking as we go, and we will take this quote and visualize it.
Just be clear to your viewers. I actually have no idea what you're going to hit me with.
No, that's that.
I mean, truly, I have no idea. Yeah.
Well, except these are quotes that you wrote anywhere between 3 and 4 years ago when you were working on To Sell Is Human. So
we'll see how many of them I still believe. Yeah.
Is I want you to pick a door. We have a quote hidden behind each door. I want you to go ahead and pick a door. Which door do you choose?
4.
Door 4. Okay, let's see what's behind door 4. All right, door 4. Oh, power leads individuals to anchor too heavily on their own vantage point, insufficiently adjusting to others' perspectives. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draw out what this means. And there we go. Okay, Dan, so I can read the quote to you one more time. I have it printed.
I got it.
Got it. Okay, so power leads individuals to...
And that quote that quote is actually a quote from a paper that I cited. Those are actually not my words. Those are the words from a paper written by... Well, let me look at it again. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me see the quote again. I'm sorry, Dan.
This was your summary of the result of a study, but these were your words that were used to summarize what the outcome of the study had been.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and draw out a picture of what we think this means. You may begin. Please do.
Okay, got it. Okay, so here we go. So this is a really fabulous study about attunement, which is how do we understand people's perspectives? And one of the ways that experimenters try to understand people's perspectives. So we got a person here, okay? Here's a person's head. You can see that right there. So what the researchers do is they give this person 3 instructions. Okay, they give him 3 instructions. I'm going to draw 3 here for the 3 instructions. Okay, the first instruction that they have is identify your dominant hand. Okay, so are you right-handed or left-handed?
Okay.
The second instruction they give is snap your fingers 5 times very quickly. All right.
Can we visually capture this as we go? Can we do?
Yeah, well, I got a better one. So snap your, and then they ask the most important question of all, which is on your forehead, draw a capital E. So there are two different ways that you can draw an E. Okay, you can draw it like this, as you're seeing. I hope you're seeing right there.
We are seeing it.
Okay, or you can draw it like this. I hope you can see that more or less.
You can see the second E,
okay, so
absolutely.
So I think I'm at my 5-line limit here.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly do something. I am going to I'm going to add a little line here myself. I'm going to try. So I'm going to go back to, I want to make a correlation here behind what you're saying in the study. So what I've got is I've got a right hand and a left hand. And I just want to be clear, we are looking at this person, 4, 5, we're looking at this person face on. So they're facing us, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Yes, we
so
are.
They identified their dominant hand. Please continue.
I'll just put their nose right here, and that's their, okay, so we're looking, so.
Okay, and what are we going to find out about the direction that they draw this E?
Okay, so what's interesting about this is that when you ask people to do this, there are two different ways. If I say to you, draw a capital E on your forehead, there are two different ways that you can draw it. You can draw it like this, okay, basically taking the other person's perspective, or you can draw it like this, taking your own perspective. And what this test measures is, what's your instinct? What's your default move? Is your default move to take your own perspective or someone else's perspective? And this is how social psychologists measure the quality called perspective taking. Now, where power comes in is this. When people feel powerful, they're much more likely to draw the E in the self-oriented way, like this.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so here's what happens. There is an inverse relationship between feelings of power and perspective taking. That is, if this is power, I'll draw a little simple graph here. If this is power and this is perspective taking, I'll call this PT. The more powerful you feel, the worse your perspective taking abilities are.
This is power, and I'm going to represent power. I'm going to think of a nice symbol for power. I think I'm going to put a lightning bolt, because no one has more power than probably Zeus. So Zeus has a very high power quotient. Are you erasing the chart?
Yeah, I am. Do you want me not to?
I want to put it back in. I want to put it back in because I think something. So I'm going to. This was power, and this is what you called perspective taking. So I'm going to map power as our lightning bolt, and perspective taking I'm going to do as just two people that one has the ability to kind of look at the other one well. Is that what we would summarize as perspective taking?
Yes.
Okay, now Dan, on the chart that I've just drawn, I think I've maximized my number of lines. Can you draw the mathematical curve that it then maps power to perspective taking?
So when people feel powerful, okay, I probably should have picked different axes, but we can work with this, okay?
Okay.
When people feel powerful, so this would be like, up here would be someone feels powerful, right?
Yep.
Their perspective taking abilities are terrible, okay? When people feel, so hang on a second here, so we'll put a little dot right there, okay? Yep. When people feel less powerful, their perspective taking abilities are very high.
Fascinating to me, because I'm going to talk for a moment while you're erasing.
Yeah.
So this tells us that all-powerful Zeus has zero empathy.
Yeah, it's right, exactly. It's analogous to empathy. All right. So the more powerful you feel, but there's an inverse relationship between feelings of power and perspective taking. So when your feelings of power go up, okay, your perspective taking abilities go down. And the reason for that goes to the quotation you shared, Dan, which is that power leads individuals to anchor too heavily in their own perspective. And this is where bosses go awry, and this is where persuaders go awry. One of the most important things in any kind of persuasive effort, when we don't have very much coercive power, and when everybody has access to information, all right, is the ability to take the other person's perspective, to find common ground. And power can degrade that. So one of the things you can do if you're in a position of power is that you can improve your perspective taking abilities by briefly reducing your feelings of power, by basically trying to move this direction. If you move this direction on your feelings of power, obviously you'll get, with an inverse relationship, you'll increase your perspective taking and become more perspective.
And tell us how that connects back to this act of selling. Make the connection back to us.
Yeah, no, it's hugely important. So let's take the example of a boss. Okay, bosses are persuaders.
I
Okay.
drew this boss down here, Mr. Lightning Bolt. That's our boss, and the
Oh,
person,
there he is.
the lumpy person over on the side, that's our non-boss. And the common ground between them is this line that I drew on the bottom. So if you want to take that as a starting point.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So the guy over here on the left is the boss.
Yeah.
Okay?
Lightning Bolt head.
Okay. So if Lightning Bolt head says to the other person, do it. Just do this thing, right? And maybe this person here, the happy the employee, this person right here says, oh, you know what? That's kind of thinking it's kind of a stupid idea. But if the boss doesn't understand the employee's perspective, the employee is not going to do very well. So the boss can get better. Mr. Lightning Bolt Head can be a more effective leader if he reduces his feelings of power before the encounter. So instead of saying, I'm the boss, this person does whatever I say, instead, if he clicks down his feelings of power, he can become more persuasive. One of the things, let's look at it this way. Here's a way to visualize it. So this here is a dial. Okay, imagine this as a dial of power. Okay, and let's say that power can go up to 10. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when bosses face resistance, or when we as persuaders face resistance, what we tend to do is we tend to try to turn up the dial. We try to feel more powerful. What I'm suggesting, based on this research, is that you might want to go the other way and dial down your feelings of power because of this inverse relationship between feelings of power and perspective taking. Here's the point. The more powerful you feel, the worse your perspective taking abilities are. And that creates problems for all of us as persuaders. When we're in a one-up position, we often lose our capacity, we often lose some of our effectiveness because power distorts our perspective taking abilities, and perspective taking, finding common ground. What's in it for that person? What are they thinking about? What obstacles do they face? Make you a better persuader.
And make you far better salesperson. And it's interesting if you think
Absolutely.
about people who are very obsessed by their own sense of power may have a very difficult time, in fact, convincing other people to move along with them.
That is, on that one, I'm just gonna write these words. All right, amen. That is exactly right.
Fabulous.
Right? And notice the E is in the perspective. Notice my E is the perspective taking ability.
Well, because I know you're a very empathetic person.
Indeed,
E for empathy.
indeed.
Are you willing to do one more of these?
Of course, I'm eager to do one more.
All right, let's do another one.
2.
All right, so you pick door number 2.
Yes.
What's behind door number 2?
Make it a good one, please.
Okay.
Please.
The problem we have saving for retirement. I loved this one because
this is a very interesting study, and we actually did a little TV experiment on crowd control with this study too. The problem we have saving for retirement is a disconnection between our present selves and our future selves. Okay, this one is super interesting. I don't know. No, this is really interesting. This is an experiment out of UCLA, and they're wondering, like, why do people not save for retirement, right? It's logical to save for retirement. And so what they found out was that the problem was, and let me try to, I might violate my number of lines. Okay?
Don't worry, we're on a roll. I love it. Okay.
Okay. Is that, and so here we go. Here's a badly drawn person. Okay. So this is basically 30-year-old Fred. All right. So you say to Fred, here, we'll call him, it looks like 3D Fred, but you get the idea. So we say to Fred, okay, Fred, save for retirement. All right, save for retirement. And it's logical to save for retirement. Put some money away. Here's your egg. Here's your nest egg with money in it, Fred. Come on, put some money away. And Fred doesn't do it. And one of the reasons for that, according to these researchers, and there's a great remedy here. The remedy is really the super cool thing here, is that Fred, here we go. Now we're going to draw a 30-year-old. Here, now we're going to draw 70-year-old Fred, say, okay? 30-year-old Fred looks at 70-year-old Fred as, and I'll skip over how they found this out because it gets a little bit complicated and non-visual, is that Fred sees the 70-year-old person. Here's Fred down here, okay? So Fred is 30 years old. He's thinking about himself, but he considers 70-year-old Fred a different person. All right, it's so hard for him to fathom being 70 that he considers this person, we'll call this person Al, all right? Oversimplifying, okay? So he thinks about 70-year-old Fred, and it's so hard for him to fathom. He thinks of it as a different person altogether. And so
why would I be giving my money or saving money for this other person?
Why do I want to give money for Al? That's crazy talk. Why would I want to give money for Al? And so the remedy here is what's so interesting. So how do you get people to save for retirement? What these researchers did is they showed Fred, okay? So the researchers come in and they say, Fred, I want to show you a picture, okay? I'm going to show you a picture, all right? And with the picture they showed Fred is they use some of this software that can age advance an image, an age advance a face, okay? So they say, Fred, take a look at this. So they took a picture of Fred at 30 and aged it to Fred at 70. Okay, so here are the see if I can draw some wrinkles around here. All right.
Yeah,
so
I got it. That's great. Put some glasses on him too, like you and I are both wearing these readers, right?
He's got these glasses on, and and maybe like Fred has a good head of hair over here, and suddenly he's bald, and now he's walking, and his neck is all scraggly instead of muscular. And so you show Fred an age-advanced image of himself. Like, Fred, this is what you're going to look like at 70. All of a sudden, Fred says, hey, I want to save for retirement. Give this guy some money.
So it's a matter of seeing yourself in that future state.
Literally, because we tend to think in the present, we tend to think of our future selves as different people. And so what this guy, Hal Hershfield at UCLA did, is that he used age-advanced photographer. You can go online and find
there's an app for that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can show it to people, and all of a sudden they start saving for retirement. It closes if you go to that quotation again, it's like people don't save for retirement because let me see the exact words there. The disconnection between the present selves and our future selves. What this image does is that it actually makes the connection between our present selves and our future selves, and encourage people to save for retirement. And Dan, you mentioned crowd control. We did a great experiment on this in crowd control where we took, there's another issue as important as retirement to people's health and well-being, okay? And that is, see if you can guess what this is right here, what I'm drawing. I'll give you a hint. It's golden and really hot.
It's the sun.
Indeed. All right. So why do people not use sunscreen? It's a similar kind of thing. So what we did is we set up a booth on the Jersey Shore, where people could go into the booth and see an age advance, what they would look like if they didn't use 30 years later, if they didn't use sunscreen. And what we had is people were so shocked at how hideous they looked that they started slathering on the sunscreen. But this is really important in sort of how we think about ourselves, and also ultimately on persuading. It's very hard to get people to do things for the long-term benefit, even of themselves, even if it's purely rational. And part of that is this disconnect between our present selves and our future selves. And this little technique that Hal Hershfield used is quite ingenious, and and has actually now been used in other kinds of applications to get people to make better choices for the future.
Well, and the other thing, Dan, I love the story. The other thing that I am going to choose to amplify is the fact that the way you motivated these people to make this change in action. So from Fred, 30-year-old Fred, over to 70-year-old Fred, the motivating factor was showing them what? A picture. And
totally, absolutely right.
Since I'm a hammer, I sell hammers, and my hammer is the visual mind. So therefore, everything looks like a nail to me, to beat that analogy to death. So what's doubly intriguing about this is this perceptual dilemma that we have that is resolved by simply showing me and planting in my mind's eye a picture of me. And I'm guessing that that's going to be infinitely more powerful than showing me, a chart of my bank account today versus tomorrow.
Exactly. Because that's such a good point. I can show you, even as much as I love graphs, I can show you a chart saying, this is time, okay, and you put in a little bit here in compounding interest, and like, look how much money you're going to get when you're 70, and that kind of chart.
Oh yeah, show me another one of those, Mr. Broker. Yeah, I've seen it.
Right. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't do very well. So I'm going to put on if your folks are interested in it. This is the name of the guy at I just typed it in here. You guys can
Hal
see that, right?
Hershfield.
Yeah. If you guys are interested, if you want to just look at just put that into Google, put like that and like aging or retirement or something like that. If you want to, if your folks want to read some of the studies or even some of the stuff that's been written about the study.
One of the things that I'd like to do too now about pictures and about some of our Napkin Academy listeners is a couple of interesting questions coming up, in particular from Susan. So Susan, unprepared drawings, putting you on the spot. You've got a couple of minutes to draw with the Dans. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I think I posted about 2 things, so either one is fine with me. Do you have a preference?
Fascinating about the inverse relationship between power and perspective taking, but I think that is dependent on the typical understanding of power as being power over other people. There's another definition of power over the internal self, that is more related to Eastern philosophies of self-actualization. So I'm going to try to visualize, Susan, my interpretation of it, and then Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you. So I'm going to say that this is the person, and we've been talking about Fred, so let's go ahead and make this Mary now. So this is Mary, and Mary has 2 kinds of power. This is Mary's actual being. This is her head. This is Mary's body here. And I'm going to say that if I'm riffing off of what Susan's talking about, there's probably 2 kinds of power. One would be this hammer that I can wield, that gives me power over other people out here. I can beat them or I can support them. That's the power I have over them. But you, Susan, are talking about a power that resides simply within myself. So let's talk about this a little bit more. I've teed it up. Dan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, and I think Susan makes an interesting point about this particular issue, where if you have, oops, let me see if you guys can guess what this is. Okay, if you ask people, wow, Maine just got huge, but if you ask people in the USA what power is, and apparently Maine has colonized much of the Atlantic and some of Newfoundland. And there's been an exodus of people from Texas who have somehow migrated to Alabama. Leaving that aside, I think if you ask people, in the West versus people here, I'm going to try to draw Japan. This is sort of a bad drawing of Japan, and this is, of course, not the scale because you have all of Europe here. But I think you do see in the research different perspectives on this that are really interesting. And from a Western point of view, I think what Susan is describing, it's a really insightful point. I think that in some levels, power in an Eastern philosophy would be very much what you're talking about. It's essentially an inward directed power. So Mary has power over herself rather than power externally.
And let's riff on this. Research free for a moment. If someone has a good sense of power over self, as opposed to power with my hammer over others,
as opposed to feeling this need to convince them about something.
Yeah.
And Dan, this was a quote behind a door you didn't call. That Susan, it seems like it's the success of a pitch depends as much on the catcher as on the pitcher. Dan, you want to give us a final thought about that, how that might overlap, and then I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap this thing up.
Oh man. Okay. So I think Susan has such a really profound point about how a lot of our notions of and our understanding of behavior comes from research grounded in Western concepts. And so Susan is talking about that. I say, well, no, Susan, you're talking about self-efficacy. You're talking about self-awareness.
Yeah.
And in Western, I think it's so interesting, in Western terms, that's how we talk about what you're describing. But even then, it's like it begins right here. It begins with the self. And so I think you've exposed a kind of a chasm in different ways that East and West think about the world. There is some incredible material written on this. One of my favorites, if you just indulge me for a second, and because it's visual, is this. So imagine, if you ask basically Americans and Japanese, imagine this is a fish tank, okay? And so here we have you've got like stuff, like plants and things. Those are plants. You've got little fishies going in here. Maybe you have a big fish, in here. All right. And
Loving your drawing, by the way, Dan. Loving it.
Little fish there. Okay. And so what's interesting about this is that this is the work of Richard Nisbet at Michigan. If you just have Westerners and Easterners look at this, basically, let's put a finer point on it. Japanese and Americans. Americans will look at this fish tank and they'll say, I should make this one slightly bigger. Let's make this guy slightly bigger. Okay. All right. And let's make him darker, more prominent. Okay. They'll say, what do you see? Like, what do you see here? They'll say, I see a huge honking fish. All right. Whatever's in the foreground, the Americans will describe as what they see. Whereas the Japanese typically will describe the background. Oh, well, I see plants arrayed side by side in an aquarium. And so so again, one of the challenges as we look at the research on especially social psychology, some of economics, is that it is in some ways in the grip of certain kinds of Western thinking. And I think Susan makes a really, really, really good point about, especially us Westerners, need to break out of that and recognize that there are different perspectives on this. And even people who literally see the exact same thing might describe it differently because of their culture rather than their brains.
Wow.
That's an excellent point, Dan.
Susan, I want to thank you so much for joining us. That was a great question. I hate to do it, but we've got to break up the party. Mr. Pink, I really, really appreciate the time that you've taken to draw together with me, and you were
it was so fun, Dan. I really enjoyed it.
Well, great. So let's schedule it and let's do another one in a year from now. After, what's the name of that book again that's coming out? When is that coming out?
We're getting there in a laborious way. Here it is. Da, 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 da.
Ta-da! When? Coming to you in January of 2018. So again, Dan Pink, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Very good. And this is Dan and Dan signing off from the Napkin Academy. And I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon online, and we'll draw together. Thanks so much. Take care.